Welcome, everybody. I'm Heidi McDonald. I'm the creative director for iThrive Games. Our mission is empowering teens through great games, and I'm going to talk a little bit about what that means because it's kind of abstract. Um, I'm hearing a lot of static. Oh, there, it stopped. Okay, great, thank you. Um, Basically, my journey in games has been a very interesting one. I broke into games almost accidentally when I was 41 years old. This happened because in 2008, I was a stay-at-home mom. I had been a stay-at-home mom with my youngest for several years, and then my husband at the time was working for a company that, because of the recession, fired 5,000 people. And unfortunately, he was one of those people. And suddenly, my husband and I are both struggling to and scrambling to get a job so that our family will be okay. And fortunately, he was able to get another job, and that was really good, and we were really happy about that. But what happened to me was I had never gone to college before. I had had a career in corporate communications and freelance writing and those kinds of things, so I had a really good portfolio, but I was losing out on job positions to people who had a degree. It's like I had the better portfolio, but they had the degree. And I got really angry, and I decided, you know what? I am never going to be a liability to my family again. So when my little guy went back to school, I decided I was going to go back to school too. So here I was, 39 years old. I hadn't been to college, and I went to college. I went to Chatham University, and I double majored in communications and professional writing in order to legitimize everything I had already done. And I also majored in film and digital media to teach me all the hot new multimedia tricks so that I would be more competitive. And while I was taking classes there, one of the professors invited the class to go to a creative careers seminar over at Carnegie Mellon University. So I went, and I signed up to go to the film and broadcast journalism seminar because I thought that made sense given the major that I had. And my professor said, well, I'm going to the video game talk. And I said, there's a video game talk? How did I not know that? So I hid the ticket. I hid it in my pocket, and I crashed the video game talk. I totally wasn't supposed to be there. And at that talk, I saw this woman from a place called Shell Games talking about her job as a video game designer. And that talk changed my life because at the same time, I mean, I've always been a gamer. My whole life, I've played games, all the way from Pac-Man arcade games, all the way through EverQuest, and just, gaming all the time. But I never really thought very much about the people who make games. And I thought, I guess on some level I knew that human beings made the games, but I never really thought about, what is that job like and what are the qualifications. So here suddenly I'm hearing this woman talk about, hey, video games is a job. It's an actual job, and here's what the qualifications are. And guess what? Women do that job. And guess what? There's a company here in Pittsburgh that does that. Well, I became completely obsessed with it. And I had the professor invite her to the class, and I was the one asking way too many questions. And I just really was obsessed with working with Shell Games. And I happened to get the courage to ask them about an internship just at the point where they needed a writer for a project that they were starting on. They only had one writer in the company, and he was busy on something else. So it was a big case of right place, right time. And that's how I broke into video games when I was 41 years old. I was the oldest intern that Jesse Shell has ever had. I'm actually 3 weeks older than he is, and that's been a topic of joking between us. The movie with Vince Vaughn and Owen Wilson, I pretty much lived that movie. It's like you're the older person in a studio full of younger people, and you're trying to find your way and figure things out and see if you can get hired at the end. And I was very lucky to get hired at the end. I appreciated that a lot. Here are the projects that I worked on when I was at Shell Games. Play Forward, Elm City Stories, Tunnel Tale, Battle Train, The World of Lexica, Happy Adams, and then I got to go out on a really silly project, and I appreciated that. That was Orion Trail. Think Oregon Trail in space as a Star Trek parody. So that was a lot of fun. But as you can see here, the different projects that I worked on, Play Forward, Tunnel Tale, Lexica, Happy Adams, those are all projects that have to do with learning, and it's something that we call transformational games. We expect you to play these games and be changed in some way after having played them. And I found that to be really fulfilling work. I think the one that I'm the most proud of that I worked on while I was at Shell Games was Play Forward Elm City Stories, which we made as part of a study done by Yale University School of Medicine. It was an HIV prevention game where teens had to play through a version of the 7th grade that really went wrong, and then they had to kind of backtrack, play mini games in order to increase their ability to notice different clues in the situation that would have enabled them to make a different choice. So that's why you're playing forward. You're playing from the worst to the best, kind of like in Groundhog Day. And what Yale did with that game is they had 250 kids who played our game, and then they had 250 kids take regular health class, and then they followed the behavior of those kids for 2 years to see were we able to delay sexual activity, number of pregnancies, number of diseases, things like that. And they did release a paper in Melbourne in 2014 that said preliminary data did suggest that this was an effective teaching tool. So when you hear information like that, it is just really, really powerful, because it's like, wow, I worked on something that may have saved somebody's life. And that's just really, really powerful. I worked on Play Forward Elm City Stories for 18 months of my time at Shell Games. And the constant struggle that we found was between being clinical and relatable, being a game that kids are told to play versus being a game that kids want to play, and having it be serious or having it be fun. It was a really delicate balance that we were constantly, we were constantly trying to solve that. And that's what Constance Steinkuhler referred to a couple weeks ago when I was talking to her. She refers to that as a sexy problem. And you see there that I put up here a picture of Jason Momoa as Aquaman, because I think that picture exemplifies a sexy problem, right? You're not supposed to think Aquaman is sexy because he just summons the whale, but yet here's Jason Momoa, So how do we make these games relatable but also do what they're supposed to do? That's a sexy problem, and that's why I really enjoyed working at Shell Games. Now, there's other work that I'm known for in the industry, and it all started because I had a question that I wanted to figure out, and I couldn't find any sources for it, and so Jesse Shell said, I think you should go chase the answers. And so in the course of chasing answers about just curiosities that I had about how and why people romance in single-player role-playing games, that led to a lot of survey work, that led to a lot of publications and conference talks, and ultimately to a book called Digital Love, Romance, and Sexuality in Games that is, I just chose the cover yesterday. It is going to be coming out later this year. I collected essays from 15 very diverse authors from all over the world, both from industry and academia, and they've all written analytical essays about different ways of looking at love and sexuality in games. It's something I'm really excited about, and it's kind of just this side independent thing that I've been doing outside of work on my own for about 6 years now, and the book will kind of be a culmination of that. So I'm really kind of proud of it. So you might have heard my name from that too. So how did I end up at iThrive? Well, I was at PAX Dev in 2015 doing one of my Romance and Games talks. And after that talk, I had a guy come up to me and start geeking out with me about Dragon Age. And anyone who knows me knows that Dragon Age is my favorite game series of all time. And it's not getting me to talk about Dragon Age, it's getting me to shut up about it. So this guy and I were just talking for about an hour and a half about Dragon Age. And I said, well, wait a minute, tell me who you are and what you do. And he explained that he worked for this organization called iThrive. So I took his card, we agreed to keep in touch. And then when I got back to Pittsburgh, I looked at their website and I saw, wow, these people are really chasing something very, very interesting. They want to use the power of video games to encourage teens to do things that will help them thrive. Things like be more empathetic towards other people, to show more gratitude, to be more patient, to be more kind. And I started looking at the kinds of things they wanted to do, and I was like, you know what? That's a sexy problem, and I want to go chase that. So I left Shell Games to go work with iThrive in October of 2015, and I've been there as their creative director ever since. Now, Tony Wagner at Harvard University has made this chart here about 21st century learner outcomes that are going to be really critical in the workplace and in the professional space and even in social communities. Things that have to do with critical thinking and community and the way that we relate to other people. Softer skills are going to be just as important as some of the things like learning how to program. They're going to be just as important in the 21st century as they've been to this point. And so how do you take the practices necessary for those 21st century skills like kindness and fairness and compassion and patience? How do you combine those with video games in a way that's going to help kids function better? Like I said, that was another sexy problem, and that's why I decided to work at iThrive. Now, there are already tons of games that make us feel things. I highly doubt that Lucas Pope designed Papers, Please with the idea in his head, I'm going to make this game that makes people feel very deeply. But he did it anyway. And I doubt that Toby Fox made Undertale with the idea that I'm going to set out to make this empathy game, and it's going to be really strong, and it's going to hit people really hard right in their hearts. But he did it anyway. And so it's not that empathy doesn't already exist in games, it's that it seems to be happening by accident. So how can we do it on purpose? We have to start thinking about that. And then there are games that can calm us, right? Like Abzu. I don't know if you've seen that one. It is a beautiful game where you're swimming underwater and it's so tranquil and beautiful. Or the Zen Garden in Plants vs. Zombies, or the game Flower, or the app that is supposed to help you with anxiety called Flowy. These are examples of games that can bring you calm. And you have to ask what are the elements that make these games calming? Or other games that get you to be curious and ask questions. You know, I want to solve a puzzle with Professor Layton, or I want to explore the world in Minecraft or Skyrim, or I want to solve a puzzle in Monument Valley, or I want to put together these little ingredients and little alchemy and see if I can make something cool without even knowing what the recipe is. So I just have to experiment until I make something great. These games all ask us to question, and they all ask us to display curiosity. So basically what iThrive is we combine science and games. And here are some of the different ways in which we do that. On the science side, we have Dr. Susan Rivers, who is our executive director. She's been with us since last March of 2016. Her first week with us, incidentally, was at GDC last year. So you can imagine somebody unfamiliar with games whose first foray into the games industry was GDC. I felt a little sorry for her. But she has ramped up to the point where she has real passion for this work. She led the emotional learning lab at Yale, and so she comes to us from a place of great knowledge, and I respect her a lot. We've also got people who we've partnered with. We've got our own researchers, so we've got people on the science side who do these things. The kinds of things they do literature reviews in neuroscience, social psychology, and game scholarship. They're producing white papers. They're testing existing games like the Undertales and the Papers, Pleases of the world to find out what is it about these games that make them the way they are, and how can we deconstruct them appropriately. There have also been a few projects that we have funded, game projects that we've funded, and we also do testing of those projects. Last year, we funded one game through Filament Games. They built us a Minecraft mod called Companions, and what happens with Companions is you have this little corgi in Minecraft that's assigned to you as soon as you go into the world, but the corgi is obnoxious. It's really cute, but it barks all the time. It's jumping all over the place, and it's attacking everything. So it's pretty badly behaved corgi. And then you're guided to go into a village that's not like any other usual Minecraft village that you've seen before. In fact, the villagers look very different. And instead of all looking like Squidward from SpongeBob, they have emoticons over their head. And they are either sad, or they're happy, or they're angry. And you can go up to the ones who are sad or angry and find out why they're sad or angry. And they each have different issues that you can solve. There are conflicts between villagers that you can solve. And the more conflicts you solve, and the more emoticons that are able to flip back to happy, your corgi, who's with you all the time, starts to notice the kind behavior that you're displaying toward the villagers, and the corgi starts to calm down. All of a sudden, it's not barking anymore. All of a sudden, it's not running off anymore. All of a sudden, it's starting to dig next to you and find you helpful stuff that you can use in your crafting. So in that case, not only are you practicing good community behavior by helping these villagers, but you're also training the corgi, and the whole message of it is about how other people can benefit from seeing you behave in ways that are empathetic and kind. So that's what that's about, and we're testing that right now. It's in testing with the folks at Yale. We also funded a project last year with Dr. Toby Saulnier and her group at First Playable. They had a game that was called Cycles, which had been funded by DARPA in order to have FBI agents able to recognize their own cognitive biases when they are interviewing suspects. And so what they did for us is they took their Cycles game that was originally for FBI agents, and we changed it into being for high school students instead. So we just changed the audience. We changed the reading level a little bit, and we changed the subject matter a little bit. And now it's a game about teaching cognitive biases to teens, and that is also in testing with Yale as well. So those are the games that we funded last year. We are just about to ink the contract on a semester project at the Carnegie Mellon ETC. We're going to have a team of ETC students build us a suite of microgames. Each microgame is going to have to do with one of the positive psychology practices. Like, one will have to do with kindness, one will have to do with gratitude, and we're gonna take this suite of games, and we'll be able to test that at the end too. And we're also Doris Rush is doing a game at DePaul University that we're helping out as well. So we have these different projects that we're funding, and once we've funded them, we're testing them to see what works, what doesn't work, and we expect to be able to release those results soon. We are doing a special peer-reviewed issue of the Well Played Journal that Drew Davidson and the ETC Press through Carnegie Mellon publishes. It hasn't been announced yet, so you're hearing it here first. We're officially announcing it at the end of June. What we're going to do is open up a call for papers, and we would like people to submit their papers to us about experiences of positive psychology in games. The design experiences you've had, or research studies that you've done, or just any of those kinds of topics that marry these two things together. And generally, Well Played has not been peer-reviewed, but we are seeking to have our special issue be peer-reviewed. So we are also recruiting a panel of readers at the PhD level who will be involved with reviewing the papers that we get. We're doing this in the hopes that we'll be able to launch our own journal. We're going to see how this issue goes and how much it costs and what's all involved with it to see whether that is a worthy endeavor to continue in the future. But you heard that here first. So that's exciting stuff. That's what we're doing on the science side. Now on the game side, here are all the different things that I've been up to, because I'm the game person. And my job has recently gotten too big for me, so I now have an associate producer who reports to me as well, and we're the dynamic duo, and we're making a lot of this stuff happen, and it's great. I've run creative direction on our grant-funded projects. I'm the person who brokers a lot of our university collaborations. We've got different universities that we're partnering with on a variety of different things. I throw game jams. I've been throwing game jams at small festivals like MagFest. And I've also been throwing game jams at universities. And there are a couple different types of game jams that I do. I will do a paper prototype jam, which is a day-long workshop, and the value of that is that you don't get hung up on the tools. You're just focused on the design. We explain the science, and we explain how we think that influences game design, and we give you our design resources and have people just practice using the design resources. And so those paper prototype jams are really fun. We're about to have our first digital jam at DigiPen. We're going to do that in October, mid-October. That also has not been officially announced yet, but you heard it here first. We're going to have that one. That one's going to be the biggest jam we've ever done. It's got 150 slots open, and we're hoping to fill 75 of those slots with students from DigiPen, and the other 75 slots with professional game developers. And DigiPen, of course, they've got all the software licenses and all the space already, so people who are familiar with this stuff will be able to go in and make these games and be able to tell us what they thought of our design resources and what was their process when they were designing these games along with the resources, and what things did they include and why when they were designing for positive psychology outcomes. So the game jams are really exciting. If anybody listening wants to talk to me about hosting a game jam at your university, please let me know. Also, I do these things called Design Hive, where I invite experts from both the game design field and game academia, and bring them all together in a vacation home. And we spend all weekend crunching on really hard problems about game design and positive psychology and how we can make these go together. And that's actually where our design resources come from, because the science people do the literature reviews and they get us, okay, what is the latest science telling us about this? And then I take the latest science, present it to the game developer experts and the game academics and say, okay, how can we mesh these together? And so it's out of the design hives that our design resources come. And then it's just kind of, it works really well cyclically, because then we take the resources and we test them in the game jams, and then we have another hive, and it just, the two things feed into each other. And we're hoping that a lot of good things come from that. This particular year, we're going to be doing something different, something called a localized mini hive. And what that is I will go to a city and do a day-long workshop that preserves the spirit of the design hives that we have, except we're bringing together the local developers in that city who care about positive psychology and games, because we want folks to step forward and say, yeah, this is something that interests me, and I want to be involved in these kinds of design questions and figuring out the answers with you. And what we found is there are a lot of people who want to be involved, and so we've decided to do these kind of localized workshops also, to include as many folks who want to be in on the conversation as can be. And of course, the game developer resources that I just mentioned, I do that. I also have office hours where I can consult with individual developers at companies. I've gone to, Blizzard flew me out there. I got to talk at Blizzard, which was really cool. Any of you other cool big companies who are listening, you want to fly me out to talk about this? I would love to see the behind the scenes, some of that stuff. Looking at you, BioWare Dragon Age. Anyway, all right. So back in the East Coast, Dr. Susan Rivers is running a game design studio program for teens, because what she's trying to do is to engage teens in the activity of making games. And through doing that, she's learning an awful lot about what kinds of things are important to teens, what issues are they facing, what games do they like to play, and why. And that right now is one of the main ways that we allow teens into our conversation, and we allow them to inform the things that we're doing with regard to our resources and so forth. And then, of course, conference talks like the one at Serious Play. I'm flying around a lot, giving a lot of conference talks, and it's always fun because I get to meet such interesting people there. So that's a rundown on everything that I do. We have a bunch of partners we're working with right now. I added a bunch of the ones in color. The ones in gray are the ones that we've listed on our website, but the ones that I've put up that are in color, those are the most recent partnerships that are so recent that they haven't gone up on our website yet. We're looking at doing some work with the IGDA Foundation. We are supporters of HEVGA. We have a partnership with them. And of course, we've got different things going on at the ETC, DePaul, UC Irvine, and DigiPen right now. And I am always looking to add to this list of partners. So anybody who is interested in working with us in some way, what we hope to eventually do is have a bunch of different schools who are all doing a positive psychology in games course, and they can help us analyze various games and existing games like Papers, Please, and why is it that Papers, Please is an empathy game? Just to the more students we can get studying that and analyzing different games, the more that can feed to our overall knowledge of how we replicate that. Because if people are designing without thinking about it, imagine what we could do if we're designing while thinking about it. It's really kind of the work matters a lot to me, and I've staked my career on it, and I think that it's just the implications of it are huge. Now, a little bit of a preview now about the talk that I'm going to be giving at Serious Play. How do we design for positive psychology outcomes, and what elements cause a game to encourage these positive psychology outcomes? That's a question, isn't it? How do you, these things that you're seeing here, courage, cooperation, kindness, respect, how do you insert them into games? And, what are the mechanical ways that they can manifest? Now, one of these that we consider is flow. And as everyone knows, Ralph Koster already dissected that one pretty well in his theory of fun. And it's being talked about in game schools all over the world in game design classes as being good game design. So what if it's a case that designing for things like kindness and empathy isn't so much we're going to do this because it's good for you, but maybe, just maybe, what if designing for those things is also a matter of good game design? That's what we're trying to figure out right now. Because these games, again, they give you the feels. It's already happening. So what if designing for empathy on purpose is good game design? Huh. Sexy problem. So that's something that I'm working on really actively right now, and I'm working on that with Dr. Doris Rush over at DePaul University. And what our talk is going to be about is how iThrive is taking a multi-pronged approach to try to answer those questions that I put up earlier. We're doing it in two ways. We've got Doris's class analyzing games and playing through games, and they're doing their games analysis that way. But then I'm also doing my design hives where I invite these experts in and we crunch on them. So we've got the students crunching on them at DePaul University and running a process there, while at the same time we've got the experts crunching on the same kinds of questions at our design hive. And so that's what our talk is going to be about at Serious Play, is how that experiment is going, right? Because we're taking two different approaches to the same set of questions, and you'll get to find out what we've learned so far. And I think you'll see that what we've learned is pretty exciting stuff. I'm really excited about it anyway. Well, I'll give you at least a little taste of it. At the Design Hive, what we've done is we took all of the concepts that we're looking at, like gratitude, and we put them on butcher paper. We put them all over the room. And we had these experts brainstorm for 90 minutes, write down every game you can think of that exemplifies this word. And then once we had the list, then we all talked through, and these arguments got kind of heated, and it was really fun. We talked about whether or not each of those titles belonged there. And then once we had a curated list that we mostly just about everybody agreed on, then we started deconstructing it further and saying, okay, what about each of these games gets us to gratitude? gets us to empathy? What specific thing? And what we ended up with was kind of like a recipe, a design recipe that we think is more likely to result in gratitude as a player state. We now have, for each of these concepts, we now have lists of, if you include these mechanics, we think you're more likely to get here. And we also have lists of, if you include this list of things, that might hurt gratitude or that might hurt empathy. Like one kind of funny detail was we found that Cards Against Humanity was the exact opposite of kindness. So that was kind of fun. But it's an example of the kind of thing that we realized when we really started thinking about these things. And so our design resources, which are informed by the neuroscience and the social psychology and the current game scholarship, are and thinking about that in concert with the different games that apply to these constructs and how they mechanically relate, they have brought us to these design recipes, and that's what our game resources are that we're testing at the game jams. And it's really exciting stuff, and we'll be able to talk in more detail about it at Serious Play, and I hope everybody's able to join us at that point. But yeah, so that's pretty much my spiel. There's my contact information. I wanted to open it up to anyone who has questions for me or wants to talk some more about iThrive or the different kinds of things that we're doing or the lessons that we're learning.
You're welcome to use the chat there and ask Heidi any questions that you like.
Yeah, sure.
As she said, at the conference, she's going to be giving much more detail about the recipe that she's come up with, which is quite interesting.
Yeah, we're hoping to develop it into a design guide that we can make into a workbook that can be used in game design classes or can be used by professionals or by independent developers. You know, just kind of a thing to have on hand that's not necessarily prescriptive as it is to inform you, you know, here are some things to think about when you want to design in this way. Oops, somebody's typing. That's exciting. Like to learn more about the Game Design Studio program for teens. Are we finding many such programs across the country? There probably are. There probably are camps, right, for kids where they learn how to do game design, but I don't know of any that specifically have a positive psychology focus. That is what we focus it on. So while I do think that there are very many programs for teens that teach them how to code or teach them how to make games or, you know, use Game Maker Studio or Game Salad or the different things that they will use in high schools and stuff, I haven't come across any yet that are specific to designing for positive psychology. I know with the teens, we try to encourage them to make autobiographical games to help other people understand them and their experiences and the things that they struggle with in their lives. So that the active...
Sorry, I was about to ask a question, but I didn't mean to interrupt you. Heidi, I was just... Okay,
no, that's okay.
I was just going to ask, you know, in most of the session that you did here today, you just referred to games as games, whereas we have separated, in terms of describing our conference, that we are doing games that are serious. They're designed to teach or train a specific thing. And so my question is, do you see the recipe and the guidelines that you are producing to be useful primarily to serious games, let's just start with that, or where there's a specific learning process involved, or do you see them equally useful in video games, just to be sure that the design of that video game, which is primarily for entertainment, which is the definition of just a video game, how do you see iThrive's recipe fitting into both sectors, one or both, or so on?
Well, I think that it could be relatable to both, right? Because you have games that are not defined as serious games, but you have games that are, but they're all still video games, right? And so we're looking at these things on a mechanical level. You know, what mechanics do you use? What mechanics do you leave out? And I think that can apply whether you're making a game that's intended as a serious game or whether you're making a game that's just an independent game that you don't intend to be a serious game. And I think it's an interesting question to ask about, you know, what is a serious game? Because there are some that, like I said, you know, Papers, Please, I don't think that was designed to be one, but that doesn't mean it's not. And so we're seeing an awful lot of crossover that way. And we see sometimes that there are games that are made that do that without meaning to, but then there are games that are made to do that, which also work. And so we're hoping that our materials can be used across the
Probably the
entire
only thing that's
spectrum.
important is defining what application a game might have, so that someone seeking a game for a specific learning objective would be able to determine whether this would do it or not. Much as, for instance, you study great leadership just to learn about leadership. It's not necessarily a training on leadership. Okay, well, I think this has been very interesting, Heidi.
Yeah, exactly.
I thank you very much for doing this. I look forward to meeting you personally in July, if not before, because we found out we live in the same area.
Yay!
And thank you very much for doing the seminar.
Sure, no problem whatsoever. See everybody at Serious
Bye-bye.
Play. Thank you.